And so here we are with a deep voice. We'll see how long this voice lasts. Can I make it through 10 minutes? 10-minute module might be just perfect for me. That might be as long as my voice will last. So today, I'm going to look at the DMX drum machine from Drum Kit. DMX. Now, DMX has some really cool things like the bass drum, which makes sense. It has a trigger. Stop that for a moment. There we go. It has a nice BD9 drum kit with a lot of different drum sounds, and it works the way you would expect. That you have a trigger input, and you select which bass drum sound you want, and you have an output. Works really well. Snare drum also works as you expect. You have a trigger input, you select what types of snares, and notice that they have two, so you can actually have multiple sounds in a single module. Closed hi-hat, yep, works the way you expect. Open hi-hat, yep, and they all look very similar. And then there's this guy. No knobs, no trigger, no select, just voltage per octave input and an output. What the heck is going on here? Well, let's listen to it. And let's see, since I need a voltage per octave, I think I'm going to use a dual attenuverter. And what I'm actually going to do is use a chromatic quantizer so I can hit those notes individually. And let's see what happens. I'm just going to use the offset here to basically give myself some voltage changes. And let's see what happens. I'm going to hold down the control key so I can move this very slowly. And that was it. As you can tell, they're sampled drum sounds. They sound really cool. But it's interesting, how do you trigger them if there's no trigger input? Well, I didn't realize that first one was actually a double hit. Okay, so how do you trigger these? Well, you have to trigger them with voltage-controlled octave changes. It's weird. It triggers on a change, which is very strange. But also, if you give it either a 0 volt or a high voltage, there's no sound. So that means you could use a sequencer to go back and forth between some sounds. So let's try that right now. Let's go ahead and put a sequencer over here. I'm going to zoom in so we can see it a little better. And the way I like to set up sequences, actually gates don't matter because there is no trigger. You can get rid of the gates entirely. I tell you what, I'll put the gates on so I can see when I'm stepping through, I can see what the speed is. Anyway, the way I like to set up sequences is I bring it down to one step and I get the first note. Now, even if I hit the first note properly, bringing these all down to 0, I'm only going to get one sound. It's not going to repeat because remember, if the voltage isn't changing, it's not going to give me a new sound. There, see, I have a sound, but it's not repeating. Well, this one is down to 0, so if I now give it 2 steps, see, because the voltage changes is something that can be heard here, something that can't be heard here. So now let's try to find that bass drum sound. Oh, there we go. Now, how about if I put a hi-hat sound on the second beat? Oh, that's kind of cool. And now I get a third step. So let's put the bass drum back here. Now, we're only hearing one bass drum because this is the same voltage as that. I have to give it 4 steps so that it changes back down. See, so what's hearing is bass drum, double hi-hat hit, bass drum, nothing. So what if I put that same sound here again? There we go, found it. I'm going to go 5, 6. I think I'll put a bass drum back here. And maybe a hand clap on this one. I seem to be beyond the range here. Let me come back down. It's in there somewhere. There we go. Well, how about we go to 8 and I put another bass drum back here. 8 steps. We'll find the bass drum for beat 7. There we go. And now all we have to do is find something to put on 8. Let's just randomly go in there. There we go. And we have a cool rhythm. But you know what? We have multiple rows on our sequencer. So I could do something like this. And maybe put on every other beat that has the bass drum here, put another hi-hat. So I kind of have a consistent hi-hat. Let's see if I can do that. In fact, what I'm going to do is bring it back down to 2 steps. There we go. 4 steps. And I'll put a double hi-hat here. Now that's a little repetitive. The idea was good. But let's put something else on this beat. And maybe I'll put something on beat 5. Interesting. So we can actually use the 3 levels of our sequencer and maybe 3 of these to get some really complex rhythms going back and forth. And it actually sounds pretty good because these are drum samples. But there's another interesting thing I came up with, just playing around with this. Is what if I change the steps? Yeah. So if I change the steps, I get different rhythms. Well, I wound up doing that over here. Let's see. Where's the drum? So I put a drum sound here. I did the same thing. Let's see. Is it this one? Yeah, it's this one. Where I have a whole bunch of drum sounds. In fact, before I turn that on, I'm going to pull that out. So there's my 8-beat weirdness. Well, what I decided to do is take every 16th beat, run it to a sample and hold. So my sample and hold is going to give me a random voltage. And that random voltage I'm going to set to steps, which means I'm basically randomly turning this. And I also have a reset here, so it's going to stay in sync. So let's turn that up, and you'll find out when I get lower voltages, like that in the red, I'll have shorter sequences. And just for fun, let's add a little Detroit sequencer to it. And notice how we're getting these really interesting rhythms. And I think that's it for 10-minute module today. That is the DMX drum unit. A strange little unit. No trigger, no knobs, just sounds. And sounds which trigger from differences in voltage per octave inputs. How strange. I don't think I've ever seen a drum module that works that way. But what an interesting sound. Okay, Nigel, before my voice goes completely, that's 10-minute module for today. Hey folks, stay curious. See you next time.